Haven't done that in a while. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this, whether you're watching it live right now, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or some date in what would be our future, which will be right now to you. Anyway, thank you so much for joining in. Listen, before we get started, a couple of preliminaries I wanted to get out of the way. That is that Eric and I, well, I'm currently attending, and Eric is going to be attending Trinity College of the Bible and Theological Seminary. And I bring that up because a lot of times folks ask us that, and I always forget to mention it later on in the stream or get a chance to reply. It is a wonderful online school. Now, I don't get any kickbacks from mentioning that, guys. There's no financial reward for me to say that. I just keep forgetting to mention it when you guys ask, and so I thought I would bring it up since we get so many questions. In addition, we are very excited to announce we have hit or surpassed the 100 subscriber mark. It took forever. We started this channel in December.
I think so.
Yeah,
sounds about right.
Yeah, so it took a while.
We are so excited.
Yeah, so we're very excited. We're already at 120. It says 120, but those of you that have channels know it'll go up and then it'll all of a sudden drop down. You're not actually losing the subscriber. It takes a few hours for Google, for whatever reason, to bring it back up. Somehow, that's how it tracks. I don't quite understand it, but anyway. I just know that that's typical. So it'll read 121 by tomorrow morning. So very exciting. Thank you all to all of our subscribers and to all of our patrons. Florence Roxby, Nate2D2, of course, and Radical Love. And I'm pausing. I know all of your screen names, but I also know your real names, and I'm trying to remember not to use those. Except for Nate2D2, he really is a cute little robot. So, yeah. Just wanted to big shout out to all of our patrons. If anyone's interested in becoming a patron, you can just go to Patreon and Believing Thinkers, type that in, or on our main YouTube page. About page. Yeah, where the banner is on your right-hand side, it'll be our left. There's some little icons there, and you can click on. There's a Patreon one. I think it's orange, so it's easy to find. Why do it? Well, number one, of course, this helps us to make these videos. We want to go nonprofit, which that would be a huge blessing. It's expensive to file all the paperwork. We'd also like to get better equipment, do other things, which of course is expensive. So that's where that money goes. So those donations, though, you're actually getting something for it. Some patrons just give early access. For us, we are developing a set of curriculum. So once that curriculum is ready, which the first series will be airing soon. Sorry, guys, it's not. It keeps getting pushed back a few days because we've just been so overwhelmingly busy. But I've got all my textbooks in front of me for the topic, and I've been just making sure.
Getting ready.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep, getting ready. So that will be coming. And then we also have private events where we can get on and stream together, and you guys can ask questions where it's just the patrons. So there's a bunch of stuff we're doing for those that are supporting us. So, and we want to say thank you to all those that are supporting us. It really means a lot, and it really helps a lot. So thank you all. All right, so getting down to the nitty gritty. Okay, yeah, we're competing with a much larger channel tonight for airtime, so I don't know how many viewers we'll have, but we're gonna rock and roll anyway. We love you guys, and I realize that a lot of folks may watch after the fact, which is fine. We're very blessed to have anyone at all that wants to watch what we do. So we appreciate it. So we're talking about inferences and not assumptions. Now, boy, I couldn't have picked a worse title, more vanilla, cardboard bland.
Inference is not assumptions.
Not assumptions. I mean, that is just the worst title ever. So forgive me, folks, but this is an incredibly important topic. All right, and the reason is because what we want to do is teach you guys how to analyze arguments. But in order to do that, we need to understand what inferences are and how they sort of function. And then after those preliminaries, just get into, oh, you know what? I just realized that's on. Turn off the fan. Sorry about that, everybody. I hope that wasn't too loud. So then we want to get into how to analyze arguments. If you've ever watched Dr. William Lane Craig or Ravi Zacharias or any of these other guys, and they answer questions from the audience, or Frank Turek, you'll notice that they're quick at spotting logical fallacies and or picking apart arguments. And the reason is that they're using the same method that we're going to teach you guys to do, which is argument analysis. Now, that's sort of, I guess, our term,
Mm-hmm.
although that's not completely foreign to other philosophers and thinkers. So I guess we should get into it.
Let's do it.
All right, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we love you so much, and we thank you for this beautiful day and evening you've given us, Father. Please bless this time, Father. Help us to do a great job, always remembering to put you first, to honor and glorify Jesus Christ, and to do everything in the power of the Holy Spirit. Please help us, fill us with the Holy Spirit, and guide us as we go about this. Bring all things to our remembrance, and help us to honor and glorify you. We love you so much, and it's in Jesus' precious, holy, and powerful name we pray. Amen. All right. One other thing, folks. I often have said that this channel is, and Eric has corrected me, a lot of times you get trolls on the channel, and I'll go, look, this isn't for you. Only when I've said that in the past, I think I've stated it in the form of, it's not for atheists. That's not true. This channel is for anyone who wants to think, be rational, and we can debate and push back on one another. We just want to attack the arguments, not insult one another, not throw ad hominems out. The channel is not for trolls. Some people will tolerate that. That's something that we really don't do here, because it just detracts and takes away from what's going on. So if we see them, we just ban them immediately or block them or whatever the vernacular for that is. All right. But people asking questions, you are more than welcome to. It does not matter your background. Okay. It does not matter your background. We don't mind at all. We do ask people stay on topic, don't insult one another. Just some basic stuff, proper etiquette, the same type of etiquette that most people would have face to face. All right. At least in the Western Hemisphere, I realize countries are different. Okay. People are different. The etiquette is different. So as Christians, when we think about analyzing arguments, oftentimes the question comes up, well, why should I do it? Or what does the Bible say about it? And so for that, I'm going to appeal to it's actually, I think it's 2 Corinthians chapter 10. I put 1 Corinthians in my notes. The kids were coming and asking me questions today, and I got distracted. So anyway, 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 through 5. I'm going to be reading this out of the ESV. You can use any translation that you're comfortable with. So starting in verse 3, for though we walk in the flesh, we are not waging war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. So notice here, Paul's just letting the church at Corinth know, look, this is, even though I'm using the analogy of a war, I'm not talking about physical warfare. I'm not talking about fighting with weapons of the flesh. So then what is he talking about? Well, he goes on in verse 5 to describe that. We destroy arguments. In other words, that's what we attack. All right, we destroy strongholds, and 4, we destroy arguments. And every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ. So, look, if we're going to destroy arguments, okay, that's these strongholds, these arguments and these ideas that come up against God, you've got to be able to analyze arguments. You have to understand them, understand what proofs and evidence are, and how to deal with these things. And so you want to be, this is why this argument analysis is so important. We want to be able to destroy these strongholds and destroy arguments and tear down these objections against God. So how do we do that? Well, we want to understand how people present arguments, and the first way to understand this, I think, is to look at something known as inferences. So I'm going to give a formal definition, but then Erica had a definition that I thought was functional. I actually liked the way you expressed it. I'm not sure if you remember it when we were having our conversation earlier or not. So a definition, all right, and again, I realize there on a lot of things philosophical, there's not one dictionary whereby everybody is reading out of word for word. But most of these definitions, no matter where you're getting it, the source from, are going to be very, very similar, if not identical. In some cases they are. And, so don't get hung up if you go somewhere else and it's slightly worded differently. That's okay. As long as the main idea is there, I think you're fine. So this definition I'm getting from Dew and Foreman, I think it's Dew and Foreman, yeah. Their book on epistemology.
It's really great.
Yeah.
Very easy to understand, easy to read.
I think it's chapter 5 they talk about this. So they say an inference is the process of drawing a conclusion from, and I'm going to add some things here, a fact or data, okay, or set of facts or datum, just data plural, or experiences. Okay, so again, an inference is a process of drawing a conclusion from facts, data, and or experiences. That's really all it is. But to really understand inferences, thank you, sweetheart. What was your definition? Do you remember?
I said maybe analyzing data. That's what I thought. I didn't tell this to you before, but I was picturing like a scientific data in front of you and drawing conclusion from it is what I was picturing in my mind.
Yeah.
So there's information. Is there something on me?
Right there. Yeah, there you go. Got it. Sorry.
So there's information in front of you, and then it's about what do you do about it? Yeah,
that's it, right? So it's drawing conclusions.
There's much on my face. So what is the conclusion from that data?
Yeah, Brother Carnt says, I saw that pop up earlier, ESV. Yeah, I love big ESV fan here. So I think with inferences, some of the illustrations that Dew and Foreman give in the book, one of them is fantastic. I think no matter whether you're guy, gal, as a teenager, if you've ever, dating as a teenager, I think that this illustration makes perfect sense. And that's the idea of a young lady who comes bawling, crying into her parents' bedroom one evening or downstairs, or you can visualize it taking place anywhere you want. It could be a guy. It doesn't really matter, guy, girl, doesn't matter. They come running into the parents, wherever the parents are, and they're crying, and the parents say, well, what's wrong? Or they're upset. And the child says, or young adult says something to the effect of, well, my boyfriend or girlfriend doesn't love me anymore, doesn't like me. Or, the guy, oh, man, my girlfriend just doesn't like me. And so the parents are kind of puzzled by this. Well, what in the world makes you say that? Well, they didn't call. To which, this is even more perplexing because one wonders how they arrive from the evidence they didn't call to the conclusion that they're not loved any longer. And of course, this is an inference. This is the process whereby the young adult has taken data, the evidence of the other not calling, and then drawing the inference that therefore they are not cared about or loved or whatever. And so this is a wonderful inference illustration, I think.
Yeah, and I think we do this every day.
Oh,
right? Without thinking about that.
Yeah, we draw inferences all the time. That's a great point, hon. Can you think of another example whereby?
Let's see. I had many examples before.
If not, I've got one if you want to.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Okay. So I wrote a couple down here, so also
okay.
It's not like I'm super smart. I'm just prepared. So another example is that Eric and I live in Florida, and often, oh, hey, Air Church, awesome to see you. So I know I'm so ADD. Sorry, guys. So in Florida, where it's very common when folks get married to have a beach wedding. That's just kind of the thing. And when that occurs, there's also almost like this unwritten dress code, whereby if you're a guy and you show up, you're wearing like seersucker type suit, which if you all aren't familiar with, that's just sort of the fabrics, very light, breathable fabric material, often in like almost like a linen, I guess, in like a tan or a cream color.
Yeah.
Sometimes white, but usually that'll be the groomsmen or whatever. Sandals, shirt, button up, but no tie. Typical. This is real classic, right? Beachy look. So Eric and I get this invitation to attend. This is fictional, and so me making an inference here, I decide, well, that's the typical beach wear for a beach wedding, and it's the wedding invitation clearly says at Cocoa Beach. We know the area well. It's at the Cocoa Beach Pier. Okay, great. So without doing any further investigation, I take what evidence I have, draw an inference, decide to get one of these suits or borrow one. We arrive there, and there's nobody at the beach. However, what we see is people going up the pier in tuxedos, black suits, very, very formal wedding attire, to which Erica drags me up there reluctantly because I'm thinking, no, this is where we're supposed to be. Why? I made an inference and set my mind on that this is where it's supposed to be at. But I've drawn the wrong conclusion, because if you guys haven't been to the Cocoa Beach Pier, I don't even know if they still have it. There was an internal, there's some buildings on top there whereby you have a small wedding. And so that's where everybody is, and it's in the evening, and so it's a very formal affair. So I've drawn the wrong inference from a limited set of data or datum, and so I've incorrectly concluded something. So in both cases, we can trace back the error to either a lack of enough data, or wrongly concluding something, mainly by bringing in other data that wasn't provided.
Right. So. Okay, I was thinking about this. Some of you heard me going gaga over this Girl Scout cookie. So I was browsing in Instagram. I found somebody talk about small flavor Girl Scout cookies. Guys, have you heard about this? I never seen it. You haven't seen it, right?
No.
Sean is the man who always finds Girl Scout cookie in front of grocery store. Almost 100% of time, he will come home with some Girl Scout cookies. We all love it.
Yeah.
When I saw s'mores cookie, I was like, is this for real? Am I dreaming? Sorry. Because here's the inference. It's Girl Scout cookies. Come on, I never had it, but it's Girl Scout cookie. It must be good. I got to have this. So here's the inference I'm drawing is that there is Girl Scout cookie. If it's Girl Scout cookie, I drew conclusion that must be good. I don't know if it's true or not, but there's one example of inference you draw from that. Yes, Idris is here. Hi, and Nate too.
And Dinu. Oh, it's a party now. What's up, y'all?
It's a party. So yes, so that's the inference I drew. That was a poor one.
No, that's
because afterwards I have one other friend. I asked around on social media. I said, "Have you guys seen this? Who saw Girl Scout cookie in small flavor? Is it good?" And one of my friends said yes, and it's not that good. So maybe my conclusion was.
Yeah, they've changed some of their formula, though. Anyway, this isn't a video about Girl Scout cookies. We'll talk about this another time. I mean, I was going to go on about it, but I shouldn't, because, yeah, like the lemon cookies, if y'all have had them recently, they're giant size now, and they're not like an actual Oreo.
Right. They changed.
They used to be like this crispy, thin cookie material with like a cookie like the lemon Oreos, which are awesome. Anyway,
yes.
Like I said,
yeah. But there's a data, and I'm drawing something from
right.
it.
So, okay, that makes sense, right? So now, how do we then... how can we use inferences? How can we discover or find inferences that people are making and analyze them? All right, so that when we're on a message board somewhere, or we are in a chat or talking to somebody, that we can analyze said data or argument, right? A statement, if you will, and see, are there any flaws in it? Identify what the premises are, and then identify what the conclusion is, and go about seeing if it actually holds. Okay, this is what the apologists are doing, guys. This is what they've gone through a lot of this training. Most of them have had a decent amount of philosophy training, and once you learn to do this, it's really not hard at all. So we've sort of understood what inferences are. Let's talk about 3 different types of inferences. Some of you may not think of these this way, but these are inferential arguments. In other words, you've got deductive inferences, inductive inferences, and abductive inferences. Now, many of you have probably heard of deduction and induction from, if you've had any philosophy or logic course, but an abductive inference may be a little bit like Greek to you, all right? And so all that is if you're familiar with any apologetics and you've heard somebody like J. Werner Wallace talk about inference to the best explanation, or Mike Licona talk about it, that's abduction, all right? Some will argue that they're slightly different. For the sake of this, I would call them the same. We're not going to split hairs over that. So for tonight, I think we're mainly going to deal with deductive inferences, but I'll talk briefly about inductive inferences as well, and then we'll save abduction. That's a whole nother ball of wax.
Okay.
So deductive inferences are essentially, it's just when we draw out a conclusion from the premises themselves. In other words, the conclusion is already entailed in the premises. So this is a non-ampliative thing. If you don't know what ampliative is, don't worry about that. In other words, there's no new information being brought in somehow. You're really just drawing from the current data. So an example of this is the old syllogism, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man. The conclusion, therefore, Socrates is mortal. All right. So all men, we're dealing from the broad and going down into the narrow. Socrates, all men are mortal, very, very broad. Then we're taking out of that one person. Socrates is a man. Well, therefore, if all men are mortal, Socrates is a man. Oh, wait, Socrates must be mortal. We're just deducing, drawing from inside these points. You explained it, you expressed it another way. Do you remember what you said earlier?
I was explaining to children?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, what you just said is that there's a big group, right? Like in this case, men, and then we take one person from that, which is Socrates in this case. So we figure, okay, everybody who come from this group is man. We just pull one out, he's a man. So, like you said, there is no new information there, but it's good to. It's still really, really good form to study, because assuming all the premises are true, conclusion definitely is true, right?
Yeah.
So does this make sense? If you have any question,
Yeah.
please feel free to type in chat.
Yeah, you guys will want to be following on these.
Yeah.
So that, or watching it later. I mean, what I mean is, you don't want to get left behind now, or as we start rolling on further, it won't make any sense. So I'm going to keep going. I know it takes a second for the questions to pop up. And I realize this is fairly basic, but the difference between this and induction is that induction, where Sir Francis Bacon really is considered to be the gentleman who discovered induction. I hate to say invented, because it's always been there, but discovered induction, whereby, and I think, so you have what's commonly known as Aristotelian logic, which is usually deductive logic. But I think even at that time, the Greeks had induction. I just, for the life of me, can't remember who I want to credit that for. Either way, Bacon didn't like, it sounds weird. Deduction. When I say bacon, I want to think of food. Yeah. So yeah, Bacon. Are you guys picturing food? Getting hungry? Yeah. Bacon didn't like deduction because he felt, deduction, because he felt like it didn't really offer any new information, and he wanted to be able to discover new things. Yes. And so he came up with induction. Now, ironically, as far as scientific discoveries, abduction and induction are predominantly used now, and I think abductive reasoning more than induction, but that's another argument in and of itself. So induction can involve reasoning from a limited number of observations to a wider, more probable generalization. Although, again, whenever you're dealing with arguments, saying more or less isn't always the case. You can have both deductive and inductive arguments that don't follow that way. We see, I think it was Hume had a real easy example of induction, whereby the sun has always risen, and therefore the sun will rise tomorrow. And so induction really deals with probability, okay? And that's why it's not as certain. With deduction, the conclusion, if the premises are true in a deductive argument, and it's valid, it has no errors in the structure of it, okay, then the conclusion must follow. It is airtight. Induction is never that certain. Thank you. Yeah, is that the word you're looking for? Yeah, it was exactly. Does that make sense? So induction is kind of like opposite of deduction, right? Yeah. Yeah, I think you can think of it that way. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking about, in a sense that you take a look at some of the samples and then make a conclusion about the group. Does that make sense? Yeah. If you guys have questions, please type that in the chat. I'm picturing like, yes, M&Ms, right? So I say every candies in here is M&Ms, right? Right. Oh, yes, a candy inside. This must be M&Ms. Hey, what do you know? What do you know? So that's a deduction. Right? Inductive argument, yeah.
But if I said I was trying to do deduction. Am I
Oh,
confusing
that was
people?
induction because it was a probability that when you reach in there, it's going to also be an M&M. Is that what you were saying?
I said every candy in here is M&Ms.
Okay.
That's the first premise.
Okay.
Every candy in
Oh,
here
okay,
is
so we're already-
M&Ms.
I'm sorry. Then yes, it was deductive.
This candy is in this bag.
Therefore it is an
this
M&M.
is M&Ms.
Yes, that is
Does it make
deduction.
sense?
Sorry, I
Okay.
apologize. I misunderstood what I thought she was saying. Y'all are going, oh, Sean, right?
Another good example.
What I was thinking of was a whole famous argument about, I forget what it was even about, or inductive example whereby we would say every piece of candy I reached in, I can't see in the bag, so this is a different implied
Yes, I was going to do
premise.
that too.
Yeah,
I was going to do that too. Oh, what do you
Each thing I
know?
pulled out is an M&M.
The samples we took happen to be M&Ms. What's the likelihood that the rest is also M&Ms?
Yeah,
hey,
so
there's a high chance
that
the rest must be M&Ms too.
Right. So yeah, think of induction really deals with probability.
Yes. Do you
And I
see
think that's a
the
good way.
difference, or am I just confusing you guys?
No, you were right. I'm so sorry. I missed. That's what you get for having a presupposition. That's my fault. That's what I get. All right. So when we have arguments, we want to be able to, when we're looking at them and analyzing them, whether deductive or inductive, we want to be able to identify where the premises are and where the conclusion is. All right, so we can then begin to organize it and analyze it, particularly when you see these arguments, again, on a YouTube chat or, the comments section, or wherever you are, when you're talking to somebody, you need to be able to identify these things. And we're going to give a few sample arguments, but I want to give you guys some key parts to help with this.
Now this is to recognize what's premises
and a conclusion. Now, let me point out first that an argument may contain, if not an almost endless amount of premises, but it's always going to have only one conclusion. Now, you can put together several arguments as if they're almost independent premises of a larger argument, but you're still only going to have one conclusion to that master argument, if that makes sense. For instance, I could take the Kalam cosmological arguments conclusion along with the teleological arguments conclusion, or just the arguments themselves, and make a cumulative case whereby the conclusion is that God therefore must exist. It'd be sort of complicated to write it all out in form, but I think you guys can follow along with that and it makes sense. So premises, almost an unlimited amount, but conclusion, one and only one per argument. All right. That being said, we need to be able to identify them. Now, I find it's best always to identify the conclusion first and then go back, and because then everything else is a premise, all right? And we're going to deal with implied premises as well, guys. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So conclusion, there's keywords. So we generally tip you off that the conclusion is located after that keyword. Now, there's one really famous keyword. Does anyone know what that keyword is for a conclusion identifier?
It's what comes before the conclusion.
You'll see it, ... You know the conclusion's happening.
Type in the chat.
See if anyone...
What's the word we are talking about?
Ironically, this word is in the Bible.
Might depend on which translation person's using.
And by the way, you guys can use this method to find syllogisms in the Bible, or make syllogisms out of Bible verses. So you can actually make philosophical arguments. I'm trying to shut my phone off, guys. It's not.
Oh,
it's not shutting off. There we go. Power off. It's like, nope, don't want to let you shut. Oh. Any answers yet? Anyone guess that?
But I don't know how much there is. So.
All right. So I'll give it away. And some of you may have already typed it by now. But therefore is the word that you will often see. And when you see therefore, you know that it is an indicator word that here comes the conclusion.
Yeah.
Okay. So the whenever you're analyzing an argument, that's a word like that. All right, is the first thing I'm looking for when I'm looking for where the conclusion sits. Now, some other conclusion words are so, thus, hence, which generally aren't too common for us in English anymore, or ergo. All right, which is, unless I don't know why you're going to be using that in a sentence unless you just want to sound really smart, okay? But probably the most common one is going to be something like so. All right. Now, it could be the case. Score right now, you won, me too. Corin says. Yeah. So anyway, but therefore, you've got probably the most popular word, but you may not even get a conclusion keyword in there. Now, for premises indicators, you'll get things. If it's written out formally, then we don't need to look for these. But you'll get if and then relationship. Those will always be included in a formal argument where it's written out correctly. If you see IFF and it looks like a typo, it's not. That actually means if and only if. Okay, so that's common logical annotation. So if you see that and you wonder what this person can't type, no, it's if and only if is what that stands for. So for premises, if, because, since, given that. So those will outline your premises. Okay. And these are really, really helpful. Now, if you get a different word other than therefore in the conclusion, the cool thing is substitute it with therefore and see if it still makes sense. And generally, that is the big thing for me that helps me to find out if that is in fact the indication that is where the conclusion is. All right. So we have any questions? Private?
No questions so far, but you can post questions when you want to.
Yes.
Thinkers.
Yep. I'll ignore you guys unless you either put a Q or Eric will let me know.
I will let you know if there's question.
So I'm going to show you guys some sample stuff here and some sample arguments and see.
All right.
I'd love to get your. But one other thing with these sample arguments, guys, don't worry if you do not. If you get a different set of premises, if you put them in a different order, or these are just for you to learn and experiment with. Once you learn to do this, it's so much fun. John McCrae and I talk about this analysis. He is a great guy to look at. He does this quite often where he will analyze different skeptics or atheists' arguments, and he will spell them out. Now, he will usually do a great job of making it understandable for everyone. He's not going to go premise 1, ... premise 2, ... Therefore, it's not that John can't do that. He's actually quite a good philosopher. It's that he doesn't do it so he doesn't lose anybody. Okay, he's keeping it simple and easy for everyone to follow along with. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Hopefully this doesn't backfire. There we go, screen share. That would help. Application window. All right. Share. So you guys should be seeing this now. Erica will let me know if it's showing up in just a second. So this first sample argument, common one, we've all heard it. I do not believe in God because there is no evidence. All right, so we're right here. I don't know if you guys can see my cursor. We're right in that section with sample arguments. All right. So again, I do not believe in God because there is no evidence is the sample argument. So how would you guys make that into an argument? And I know that sounds dumb. And let me make one point while I'm waiting for anyone's to throw something out here. Anytime I'm doing this when I'm conversing with somebody and I'm saying, hey, is this what you're talking about? I'm always going to present the argument first, and then I'm going to ask, is this what you mean? So I'm going to write it out in the syllogism, and I'm going to say, is this what you're trying to say? If they agree and there's an error in there, I will then proceed to show them where the error is, either in their reasoning or how there's an untrue premise or something's going on where the argument's wrong. But I do not do that until I've had their agreement that is the case. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. This is important because we need to fill in premises sometimes. We don't want to straw man or weaken their argument. Okay, we want to always try to make it stronger than it's being presented as.
Yes.
So,
the principle of charity, being charitable. Okay. Here is
there we go.
Corinth.
So Brother Corinth says, I do not believe in claims that have no evidence. That would be premise 1, I think. The claim that God exists has no evidence. Therefore, I do not
nice.
believe that God exists. Excellent, brother.
Wow.
Now, here's the irony.
That's awesome.
Is that
you put that. There you go.
Yeah, if you look at our sample, it's very, very similar to the way we wrote it out. I just used what's called Clifford's Axiom. That was a gentleman who came up with a statement that's almost used as an axiom nowadays, which is one should not believe in anything without proper evidence. And so that's pretty much axiomatic. Now it's the P1 there, or the parentheses around the premise one, the P1 is just showing that what I'm saying is that this is implied, which is exactly what Torrance has noted here too. That this seems to be sort of this is understood by the person who's stating this. So in case y'all are wondering, how did Torrance and Sean and Erica come to this conclusion? What we're saying is the person who's made this statement is already thinking this way, okay? And then premise 2, which is really now premise 1, is I haven't found any evidence, therefore I don't believe in God. And I think we're very similar. There's no right or wrong in this, guys. You only need to get pretty ballpark with it, because again, if you're writing it out for somebody else, they may come back and say, that's not quite what I had in mind. I think it should be reworded a little bit more like this, and that's fine. Great. Now you have something with which to work.
Yeah, we are working with language, so
yeah,
sometimes we get different variations.
Yeah.
I like what Collins did, though. Excellent.
Yeah, I really love that.
Yeah.
So notice that in the case of the larger one I have here, because I don't have Clarence's comment in front of me right now, P2 there, premise 2, I have found no such evidence, would also have another implied premise, which is the idea that they've sufficiently searched, which I don't think any of us, any of you in the chat or Eric and I would agree with, because we know based on standards of evidence, whether it's legal standards of evidence or logical standards of what evidence would be considered, and or historical standards of evidence, we would say, yeah, that's just simply not true. Again, it would depend on how they're defining evidence too. Okay, so nevertheless, at least there you can write it out and go from there. So that way, once you've written a statement out like that, you can then proceed to talk to the person and say, why should I believe premise 2, P2 there? Why should I accept that? You see, so it gives you the ability to then move forward. All right, so here's another one. This one's sort of weird, but I didn't want to be all, what's the word? Not political, but
Apologetics only?
Yeah, I wanted to give it some variety. So you are dehydrated. You need to drink more water. The human body does not function properly when it is not appropriately hydrated, and you need to maintain full function. Now, this is not my statement. Let me say that first. I borrowed this from Lawrence Cahoon. He has a video series on logic. I like it though because it's actually very hard. And when writing something like this out, I could very easily write it out quickly and say, oh, this has all kinds of problems. Well, maybe not all kinds, but it has one glaring problem. Okay.
Yeah. So first, sorry, am I stopping you?
No, go ahead.
Of the statement.
Go ahead.
So this one doesn't have those keywords in front of the conclusion.
Right. So this is complicated already, right?
You have to kind of look forward.
If we had to guess, for me, immediately, and I'm curious what you all think would be the conclusion. Write it in a comment. If you and listen, guys, again, no
wrong answer.
No wrong answer. Just throw out whatever.
Yes.
The ideas that we're thinking about.
What do you think is the conclusion?
I'd love to hear what you all think. And so while you're typing that out, I realize there's a delay, so I won't give an awkward pause. I'll just keep talking. You are dehydrated, to me, seems to be the conclusion. You could argue that you need to drink more water is the conclusion. I think you could go either way with that. I think either is fine. Yeah, I think I actually I did put, you need to drink more water as the conclusion. So we'll see here for premise 1, and I'll show you Erica's version of this in a second. You are dehydrated. Premise 2, the human body does not function properly when it is not appropriately hydrated. Premise 3, you should maintain proper function. And conclusion, therefore, you need to drink more water. Now, this doesn't flow very well. I mean, it's okay, and I was trying to not to change it around too much when I originally wrote this. There's also some implied stuff going on here that I didn't want to spell out too much. But Erica did a great job, so I'm going to scroll down to hers. Hers was, she points out where they're implied. You need to do what it takes to maintain proper function. Do you see the implication there? All right, and that's obvious, right? Why? Because if you don't maintain proper function, you may die, right? Or get sick or hurt, whatever. Premise 2, your body does not function properly when it is not hydrated. Premise 3, you are not hydrated. Premise 4, you need to drink water to be hydrated. Again, implied. Conclusion, therefore, you need to drink water. Erica, what she did was sometimes called steel-manning the argument when she wrote that out. So, Brother Corrence, write one out?
Yes, right here.
Yeah, grammatical sequence.
I would say the conclusion is that you need to maintain full function, and water is a means to that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Corrence, and I think you could go with that as well. Sometimes it's really hard with these arguments because, again, the idea here is to make the person's argument as strong as possible. And so what Corrence is doing here, these you guys that aren't versed in this, is that he's trying to do exactly that. He's looking at the grammatical and he's making a grammatical analysis. And he's going, well, in order for this to be the strongest, it should probably be written out this way. And I think that would be fine. Cahoon, I think, wrote it out as you need to drink water as a conclusion, I think. I'd have to go back and look at the argument. I don't even remember now. But that's sort of cheating.
That was weird, yes.
Yeah.
Was like for function or appropriately, or rather arbitrary.
Yeah, sometimes, so they can seem that way, Air Church. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Sometimes these words can seem arbitrary, but actually in philosophy, they're there to clarify in order to avoid having to appeal to what's known as ceteris paribus. And so ceteris paribus, so ceteris paribus, I'll go back to sharing the screen in a second, is this idea whereby what we're claiming is, hey, look, all things being equal, in other words, to avoid outside information nitpicking at an argument.
Yes.
So actually,
So,
go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
No, it's all right.
I was just thinking about the same thing you're saying, so finish.
Yeah, so it's okay. So full function, I could use a break, so anytime you want to jump in. So full function, when we're appealing to something like that, is actually for clarity, although I do see your point, Air Church, and sometimes philosophical arguments can be overly verbose and wordy, and
Can be.
yeah, they just feel like, man, why is that? That does feel arbitrary or unnecessary.
Yeah.
We all know what somebody means when they say this.
Because nobody talks like this.
Right. But the reason why when folks are writing things out philosophically like that is that they're trying to make an airtight argument, and so in as much clarity or specificity as possible helps. All right, and there are some ways that people will present things because they know that it can't be refuted. In other words, the phrase "it seems to me." When a philosopher says that, you know you're in trouble. If you're looking at an argument and you're going, "Oh, I got this argument," that's problematic because it's hard to say. If you guys remember our session with Eric Hernandez, which was awesome. If you haven't seen that, when this is over, go back and watch that. Excellent. If you remember in the metaphysics, talking about it and thinking about that, no one has private access to our thoughts, so it's impossible to refute what seems to be the case for you. However, one also needs to be careful how they phrase that, because the phrase "it seems to me," if you're talking about something that's objective, you've just now flipped into a subjective mode, and if you're not careful, that your opponent can easily just say, well, that seems to be the case for you, but that's your opinion. So now you've sort of lost the debate by appealing to your opinion instead of to factual data of some sort. So that was really long. long-winded. Excuse me, guys. Good. Did you want to read that? Or something that?
I'm just reading some comments to see if there's any question.
Sorry, guys. I had the hiccups or something there. All right. So.
That's principle of falsifiability.
Principle of falsifiability. Yes. Yeah. That's right.
So they should really define what they mean as acceptable evidence first.
Yes, and that's something that that you always want to do. I am working on. I'll show you guys a brief view. My own apologetic tactics methodology, which is nope, can't see anything else. That's all for now. Which deals with that a little bit, Corrence, and somebody pause the video. They're gonna get all my good stuff on there. It's nothing groundbreaking, but the concepts of how to deal with this sort of stuff and how to think about it philosophically, all right, using the tools of philosophy to get right through an argument quickly. Now, you wouldn't go through that as a checklist, boom, 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 but once you understand that methodology or something like it, it's really easy to analyze an argument quickly, which is what we're trying to teach you guys to do. Because if you can separate the conclusion of an argument, right, and then go after it, it gets much easier. And I'll tell you guys this, it's fun to go through once you learn this. No matter what your politics are, political statements, if you're learning logical fallacies and you want to learn to apply them, analyze an argument, write the argument out, and then go after it with all of the fallacies of logic that Eric and I have been teaching on the channel, it's endless. You'll find all kinds. Doesn't matter which side of the aisle, what country, if it's political, there's going to be fallacies of logic involved. And the reason for that is oftentimes politics plays on emotion and oftentimes ignores logic, and so it doesn't matter which side of the aisle, okay? Or again, YouTube comment sections, and again, what I always do is I just read it for fun and then analyze the arguments out as an exercise. Statements, I take the statement and analyze it, turn it into an argument, construct it as an argument. Now, there are some statements that can't be constructed as an argument because they don't have, they're arbitrary in the sense that they don't purport that, for instance, they make a statement about an opinion. If they do, and like, I like ice cream, well, okay, great. There's no content beyond that. Okay, well, it's subjective. A, again, I don't have access to what they like or don't like, so I have no way of refuting that. And B, why would I care? All right. But it's when somebody wants to make a truth statement about something. This is the case. This is not the case. There is this. There is not this. Whatever. Generally speaking, they're gonna also provide some sort of evidence, which is the premise, sorry, and then you're gonna have a conclusion, all right, the summary of that, the final thing, what that is they're trying to say. Anything you want to add to this?
And I like what you said about principle of being charitable, making the argument as strong as you can. That's what I usually try to do, because like you said, people don't always think and talk logically. We appeal to emotion quite often, and you will see that in politics, YouTube comments, and many other places, because people are not used to thinking logically. That's why you want to try making, when you put the statement in syllogism, you want to make that as strong as you can without putting words in the person's mouth. So it can take some practice, but that's a good practice to have. Any questions, comments?
Air Church had a funny comment. My feelings don't care about your facts.
Hi, Radical Love is here.
Oh, what's up, Radical Love in the house?
Good to see you.
So I know there's another channel, big channel that's doing a broadcast right now.
You guys are so awesome for being here.
We love y'all and appreciate it.
Yes.
Greatly. So yeah, with this, and what we're trying to do here is help you guys to think for yourselves. You know,
be thinkers.
Yeah, to be able to do this stuff and be thinkers and not need us to tell you what's wrong and what's right, but be able to analyze things for yourselves. Not that we don't mind sharing our opinions about things, but in the end, this is what we want on all sides of the aisle, all branches, all walks of life. If everyone could think a little more logically, it would make life a whole lot easier. Okay, there was a movie, and I don't remember the name. Maybe somebody can put it in the comment section. It was one of these, apocalyptic isn't really the right thing. It was like in the same vein as the Hunger Games, where these folks were on the top of a plateau.
I never watched Hunger Games.
It wasn't that good. The first one was all right. The rest were meh. And at any rate, there was this phrase that they kept saying. The parents kept saying to the kids, "Precision of language, precision of language."
Oh, it's a movie.
Yeah, it was a movie.
Oh, how is it called?
I don't
watched
remember
that
the
with
name.
You.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the statement was funny because they were over emphasizing this precision of language and making it out to be, overly analytical and whatever. And I was thinking in my head, oh, that's actually a good thing. That when you're trying to be as precise as you can with your language, again, particularly in philosophical or theological things. All right, we want to be clear. We want to have clarity. All right, so one last thing here. I get 10 minutes left. We'll probably end at 9, folks. So unless there's a ton of questions, which we're happy to answer.
Yes.
Let me do the screen share again. Go back here. And share. Okay. So enthymemes, right? These are essentially nothing more than implied premises. Now Eric and I already had pointed out some, and Corinth had found one as well. I mean, he's very good at this kind of stuff, so that doesn't surprise me. But if we look at this first statement here, there's some implied premises here, and I'm only concerned with the implied premises right now. I'm not as concerned with writing this out in a syllogism. I just want you guys to see this, and I'll talk about some key ways to identify these. So here,
I'm to talk about dogs.
That's right. I was going to say, you know who wrote this illustration. So
it's an example for you guys.
Yeah, you should adopt a black dog because compared to other colored dogs, they have less chance of being adopted. That's actually a fairly logical statement, but what is the implied premise?
Yes, there is an implied premise here that this statement is not saying, but it's obvious. The person who says it is thinking this. Does it make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, but when you write this in syllogism, you have to understand what's being implied here. That's not being said. What do you think it is? I need to practice for you.
I'll teach you all a trick right now while there's a delay. Is that oftentimes when something is ethical statement, there's going to be an implied premise, or I don't want to say opinionated, but is telling you based on, it's going to be inductive, most likely, argument. There's going to be some implied premises, and there's almost every argument will have an implied premise. And generally, you'll ask the person forming the argument. The question you'll want to ask is why? Why should I do X? All right, or why should I believe X? Will draw out the implied premise, or series of premises. So, Erica, what is the implied premise here?
Okay, so there is no one right answer, but it is, let's see, I don't know if there's enough information there for me to go. I understand, Corinth. Okay, so
Yeah.
So there's more than one implied premises here, but one being that all dogs should have equal chance of being adopted. That's kind of implied, right?
Right. So remember I said there's ethical, I think I said
yes,
maybe.
I'm going for ethical here.
And generally, again, yeah, implied premises are often ethical, by the way, guys. Very often ethical, that one should not, for instance, let me give another illustration real quick. Turn this. So let me see if I can remember. We'll try to come up with one of these here. And I'll go back to that screen in a second. Or actually, I'll let you talk about that a little bit more while I'm trying to think of.
Yeah, so that is being implied. It's also implied that that is more all the dogs being adopted, black dogs being adopted, is more important than each human individual's likings of colors of the dog, right? Sorry, I'm thinking, in my head, I'm trying to help you remember.
I'm trying to think of some different arguments. So it's hard because I'm wanting to spell out all the implied premises. That's why I'm over here like straying. If y'all are wondering, man, is smoke going to come out of Sean's ears? Yeah, probably, because I'm trying to ignore the implied premises and I would have to write these out. But anytime you have an argument again that's making an ethical statement, it's generally going to be
Yes.
implied. So things like, having to do with stealing or morality or whatever, there's implied premises all over in them. And I was trying to think of an example whereby I'd want to say one shouldn't steal, and then if one steals, then one will live a miserable life. But there's part of the implied premise there. One does steal, therefore they'll have a miserable life. But there, again, there is with any argument like that, there's going to be implied or enthymemes, right? In that they're implying certain things, that it is not good to steal, or that
it's morally wrong.
It's morally
to steal,
wrong.
That kind of stuff.
Right.
So would you say something like, "Oh, you cannot possibly believe that person because I saw that person steal"?
Right. There you go.
Would you say that's an argument? That's an implication.
So it's already a logical fallacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's ignore the logical fallacy there. All right, and say, could you make the statement one more time?
So I might say, well, we shouldn't trust that person. You say, why?
Why?
Because I saw that person steal before.
Right. Now, is stealing bad? Yes. All right. I think certainly as Christians, we would all say yes, it is. And even anyone that's not a Christian, if they want to be consistent, can't get mad if somebody turns around and steals their car stereo, all their stuff in their home, if they're going to object to this and say, oh no, stealing isn't bad, right? So if we would say that stealing is in fact bad, that's the implied premise there. All right. So there are implied premises. Once you realize what they are, they become really easy to spot. All right. And sometimes it's also very important to be able to find these inside of arguments, because oftentimes when you can narrow down what an argument is over, the fact that it's over like one word, oftentimes, guys, it really helps. I had an argument or a discussion with a gentleman on John McCrae's channel, What Do You Meme? And it was during his slavery series. The guy was a real nice guy. So I asked him, I said, hey, do you mind if I dialogue with you about this? And he's like, oh yeah, no problem. I might not be able to respond right away because I'm working or something like that. I said, hey, no problem, man. He had made a comment about slavery in the Bible and whatnot. And I said, well, so I wrote out his argument as a syllogism. I have it somewhere. I saved these notes because I like to go back and look at my work and see if I've analyzed it correctly. And I said, is this your argument? So he made a statement, something to the effect of, the Bible has errors in it, therefore God does not exist. And I said, is this what you're saying? And he said, well, yeah, the syllogism was longer than that. But he said, not exactly. So he rewrote the syllogism out. Now, when he did, I granted the fact that as he wrote it out, if he's not a philosopher, it's going to have certain errors, okay? Because if you're not used to writing out arguments, that he had mixed a deductive and an inductive argument, it might have been intentional, but it looked unintentional, and so the argument moved from unclear, well, in most cases, people mean this, sometimes they mean this. When this occurs, it's always this, therefore this. And so he went from inductive to deductive all of a sudden. And you really ought not do that. You could. It just, the premises isn't going to be certain. Now, what's the point here? When we got to it, there was one word in there. I said, but what do you mean by this word? Now, some people get offended. I remember having a conversation with a guy who swore at me when I asked him such a dumb question. This guy didn't. He insulted me, called me a moron, and so. But what it really meant was he didn't want to take the time to define it. It wasn't the gentleman on John's channel. This was another discussion, or they don't know how to answer. But this guy was cool. This guy said, "Oh, that's a good question, Sean. What I mean by that is this." And what happened was when we went back clarifying, we realized that the entire confusion about what Christians believe versus what he had been raised to believe as a Christian before he became, I assume, an atheist, hung on this one concept or one word of inerrancy and it was inspiration on how the Bible is inspired. That's what it was about. Was exactly, do we mean dictation? How exactly is the Bible inspired? Is it word for word, literally inspired? Yeah. Is it still inspired 100%, but inspired? In different, how?
Like did God download all the information to the person to write down
word for word?
If was supposed to become a scripture, or did God put the person through certain experience so he will end up writing it? How does it happen? So I guess this person had a certain idea and didn't know that there's more than one way to think about how the Bible was written.
And he had inadvertently, because he had been taught this, so it's not his fault, straw man the Christian's position. He wasn't trying to do that. It was what he had taught. And I had been taught the same thing growing up, or something similar to it, whereby God literally downloaded word for word everything into the writer's heads. The problem with that is there's so many things that would if you were holding to that, I could see
certain things seems little silly to be there, right? Like Paul says, hey, remember the thing I left at your place? I want it back.
Yeah, my cloak or something like that.
That kind of thing seem like, did God really put that in Paul's head? Or is it just Paul's little, personal?
Yeah.
Or what about when the person who wrote said hi?
Yeah.
Hello, I'm the one who's writing this.
Right.
I want to say hi to everybody too.
Right.
Did God put that in that person's head?
Right.
Does it make sense?
Right. So again, we're not talking about determining, because that can come in many different ways. We could say, well, they're determined to do it because God put them in certain circumstances whereby God knew in his perfect knowledge that they would do these things exactly as he wanted, and allow them a little bit of wiggle room to do it, or not. I mean, whatever it can. So it's the way God is having these things happen. If he's downloading word for word every single word, not that once it's written, it won't be complete and nothing will be changed. What we're talking about here is how it's being conveyed. Okay, it doesn't matter what you believe. I'm not too worried about it. But what I'm saying is that it was all over one word in the argument, and so that's why clarity is so important. That's why writing these things out is so critical, and remembering to ask, is this what you mean? And then they'll come back and say yes or no, and then you'll go about approaching it. And don't worry, y'all, if we're going to do more of this in the future, in order to, as exercises as we go through. And so now that you guys have this, you'll be able to take this, start looking at statements, see if you can form them into syllogisms. All right, just arguments, right? The different things that would need to happen, the premises, and then the conclusion. All right, they don't have to be perfect right now. And then once you can do that, you can start looking and seeing, oh, is there a fallacy of logic in this? I see that all the time. That's what I was going for too. Is sometimes when I analyze these arguments, I had one, I think it was a gentleman, say something to the effect of, every single Christians can't be trusted. And I said, why?
Yeah, I remember that.
Because every Christian I've ever talked to, and I've talked to at least 5,000, is dishonest. Therefore, every Christian in the world is dishonest. There's a number of problems with this. I think that the individuals being overly critical of the Christian, because I even asked for clarification. Are you saying that anyone that's not a Christian, are you evaluating it at the same level? Are you saying that these people over here who are not Christians are not as dishonest? Or are you saying no, everyone's dishonest? Which would be a fine statement if you said everybody's dishonest, because it lets me know what the credulity is there, the level of criticalness is what I mean. And instead, the gentleman said, no, just Christians. And I went, okay, so all Christians are dishonest because the 5,000 or so that you've met are all dishonest. But I already have a problem with that all 5,000 people he met are patently dishonest. And I even asked for clarification on what he meant by that, because they believe that God existed. Is it because no, he said just morally dishonest. And I went, what? And we had this conversation, and when I pointed out all the fallacies of logic after writing these all out and everything, the person said, oh no, yeah, it may not be logically right, but I'm still holding to it. Mm-hmm. And I just went, what? And that reminded me of, I think it was Air Church's comment, I reject your logic because I forget what the comment was, because it goes against my feelings. Oh. And so it was a joke, obviously, I know that, but the point being, that's, don't be surprised if you end up getting that. For a while, those were the kind of responses I would get, and I just go, wait, you're acknowledging the fact that this is riddled with logical inconsistency, fallacies, it doesn't hold, some of the premises might not even be true, but you're still going to hold to the conclusion. And the people be like, yep. You go, I don't even know how to respond to that. Yeah.
You cannot expect your friends to think the same way you do if that's the case. You know what I mean? You go right ahead and feel that way, but you cannot, expect everybody else to feel the same way you do if that's the case.
Yeah. So are there any questions at all on this as a methodology? And listen, even if you got in a little late, it's fine. I don't mind at all. I'm happy to go on. If Erica has to step out for a minute, she may have to go take care of the baby. Let me know when you do, and I'll kill the thing there for a second.
I hope it was helpful for you guys. And if you have questions, please post. We are happy to give my example or answer your questions.
Further clarification.
Yeah.
I see from our dialogue, and I know Brother Corinth is a pretty good philosopher, so I know he's already got a handle on this. But if there's anyone that wants to get a handle on it, now's a good time to ask. Because as we start launching into this further, it could be the case that someone just needs to watch this over again. But it could also be the case that I haven't given enough examples or clarified something in a way whereby it's helpful. And so it was very helpful. Oh, thank you for doing this. Oh, you're always welcome, Corinth.
Yeah, thanks for being here, everybody.
And again, I'll stress this as we conclude, while I'm waiting to see if there are any other questions and/or comments, concerns, gripes, complaints. All right, which is that this analysis, as we read in the beginning, is critical in order so that we can destroy arguments that raise themselves up against God, right? So that we can tear down strongholds. If we're going to attack arguments, we've got to be able to do it in a way that's consistent, where we can apply tools, where we're not just doing it based on a gut feeling, which there's not necessarily anything wrong with, but again, consistency is going to require more than a gut feel of how to do this. All right. And so we want to be able to be consistent with this and always be able to apply the same method without needing to kind of guess. All right. So anytime we can take an argument and frame it, okay. And I'll say this too, that once you find that conclusion, the therefore ... anything that goes before that, what you want to do is just sort of, if it's not written out in any kind of order, you'll want to look at it and go, okay, can I put this in any order? You'll start to see how they should logically follow, that one thing should follow to the next thing should follow. They should flow like any good argument.
I think also when somebody say you should do this, I think that there's a high likelihood that it must be the conclusion oftentimes.
Yeah.
Like you should drink water or things like that.
Yeah, that's another good point. Yeah, because for us, again, if we're analyzing people's statements, right, you're not always going to get a therefore. Okay. Oh, which reminds me, when you go through the Bible now, particularly Romans, anything Paul wrote, you will see therefore, ... When you see the therefore, look at what the therefore is, his conclusion, and then go back and read whatever Paul has written, and you will see that pertains to that paragraph.
Yes, Paul is really good at writing that, right?
Yep. And you will find you can create a philosophical argument from this. You can create premises. Need to do this, premise 1. I need to do this, premise 2. Therefore, whatever Paul said, ...
Yeah, it's one way for you to understand the Bible even better, especially in Pauline epistles. But I don't know, do you see the same thing in Peter's writing as well?
Yeah, you'll see in Paul. I just remember very clearly
I do
doing
as
it.
well.
And you can find syllogisms, guys, which are what these things are called, these arguments, throughout the Bible. Now, they're not written P1, P2, P3.
We don't talk that way.
Yeah, therefore, which sometimes the therefore symbol, guys, is 3 dots in the shape of a triangle.
But especially when we are reading somebody from different background, whether it be language, culture, or in the case of the Bible, everything, the time is different. It helps us to understand when we use this logic, right? But the author is trying to say. So we have a question here from Corinth, Sean.
Oh, it's a question. Are there any resources you would recommend specifically for dealing with logic? Brother Corinth, I'm glad you asked that. So, yes, there are. There's a couple. There are some that we're going to be using in our Patreon classes. Patreon. I never know how to say it.
So the whiteboard you are showing earlier, that's going to be Patreon?
Eventually, that will. That's a whole course on analysis.
Okay.
Critical thinking toolkit is not bad. If you're brand new to logic, guys, this is not a bad book at all. It can get deep, but they do a pretty good job between this
Type the title for you.
and the Philosopher's Toolkit, which I know I mentioned to you guys before. If you want to, Bill Craig actually has a decent book on it for children. Learning Logic or something fairly simple.
Do you have it handy?
No, it's downstairs in the library. But that's actually not half bad. It's a little bit sparse is the problem. It's clear, it's easy to understand. It's just lacking. Now, you could get his, he and Dr. Moreland's book, Philosophical Foundations for a Christian Worldview, I think. Really thick book, but that book goes real fast. So if you don't have any philosophy background, that one can be a bit too sparse as well. It's tricky. So you can get logic textbooks, which sort of go quick. These do great. And the reason why I said it was a good question also, Corinth, is because Amazon accidentally sent us 2 books on math for logic or something. Yes, I don't remember what the book was.
And they say you can keep it, right?
It wasn't very expensive, and yeah, oftentimes when that occurs, they say, I just keep it. So I have one to give away. Yeah. So did we decide how we wanted to do that?
I'm thinking we have an email list for thinkers. So I'm thinking about doing a giveaway for all the thinkers on our email list. So if you are not already on email list, you can be on our list by going to believingthinkers.com. Enter your email, and you're gonna be when we do giveaway, you're gonna already be entered that way.
We'll just write down all the names. We'll do it old school.
Yeah, we haven't decided when to do giveaway, but if you go ahead and go there, enter your name and email, you're all set.
Yep, we'll do it within the next few weeks.
And Radical Love say, I'm gonna watch that later and ask question.
Okay, yeah.
Of course, you can send email to ask question. If you guys have question, you can email us at hello@believingthinkers.com to ask questions.
Yeah, anytime. If you guys have prayer requests, if you whatever. We try to get to those regularly. If you're skeptic, atheist, whatever, you wanted to ask a question about something, you just want to do it privately. That's easy way to, doesn't matter, Christian, whatever. It doesn't matter. We both read them.
Yeah.
Eric will usually screen them first and then pass them over to me. Unless somebody specifically asks for me, she's still going to proofread it real quick, and then it'll come over to me. Trying to think. But with the argument analysis, I think that book on critical thinking toolkit is not bad.
Okay.
Again, it sort of depends. Now we will be covering a lot of this in our Patreon classes. So if y'all are on there and you've watched this, you can always go back on there as well and ask questions. And it's coming up to the end of the month, so we've got to talk about what day we all want to have our patron hangout and Q&A session. We'll talk about that on there. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Believe me. Oh, thank you so much, Brother Corinth.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this sparse giveaway, everybody. So, which book are we giving away?
It's like I said, I think it's Math and Logic. Now, y'all are like me. I bought the book because I'm not very mathematically. Math isn't my love, okay? But I opened it up and I'm like, oh, this is just a logic text. Okay, I got it. And so they're going through and dealing with probability theory and all kinds of stuff that normally I'd go, man, I really wouldn't do this, but to be a more effective logician, I want to expose myself to these things, guys, and expand my understanding of things. So I will force myself, just like eating vegetables, to do it because I know it's good for me and that it will help me in the long run. And because the men that I respect, again, the William Lane Craigs, the J.P. Morelands, the Ravi Zacharias. I don't know how much probability theory he's studied, but other guys, Tim McGrew, Trent Doherty, these guys are all very well versed in this stuff. So that's why I do it.
Yeah, some more comments.
When people tell me that God is not, from Brother Corinth, when people tell me that God is not the author of confusion, my immediate reaction is to tell them that I've always known algebra was of the devil. Amen. Yeah, that's and that text. Listen, that we're giving away, guys. It is not. It's not, highly mathematical like that. So don't let the title fool you. And if there's something else instead that you want, if you win, I'll send you an email. If there's something else in my library that I have that I can give away that's not going to cost me an arm and a leg to replace, maybe I'll swap it out for you. We'll see. But I think that's a really good book. I got 2 of them, and I actually thought about keeping both because it seemed pretty good from what I was just skimming through it. And so again, I will try to get cracking on that this week and this weekend. Not many days left of this week. Recording those Patreon videos for you guys that are on there. So those should be up by Monday or Tuesday. Hey, Air Church, you're very welcome. Yep, we've got to go get off of here too and take care of our kiddos. So we love y'all, and God bless. Take care, and we will see you again soon. We're going to have John from JMD Apologetics 101 on soon. Yay! We keep missing him, but we're going to have that. So hopefully John will forgive me for missing him. So we will get that done. All right, guys. Love you. God bless. Take care.